In the little city of Jamshedpur, people thought the Jamshedpur Management Association thought that they're going to celebrate 50 years with a lecture on the freedom movement. And all kinds of names were thrown up. And finally, some people suggested, why don't we have a homegrown speaker? And it zeroed down and said, Gautam, you give us a talk. Then I realized, to my horror, that I didn't know enough about the freedom movement. This was Jan 97. So I asked for time and they said, how long? I said, let's shift it to August, go around Jan 26th. So they gave me time till August, and it's a 1,500 seater auditorium, so it's a big auditorium, and 2 hours was given, and I said, let's do something a little different. So I did two men and two women, and I had to mug right through for about 8 months. And the two men were Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose, was Naidu, and Vijay Lakshmi Pandit. But I did it with a little difference. I didn't want to give all that's available in our, civics and history books. I said, let me give you who they were as human beings, their personal lives, their likes, their dislikes, and what motivated them to do all this and give up their whole lives for something as vague as freeing India from the greatest colonial power in the history of mankind. So that went on, but that gave me a background. Second part came in 2017. This Belty book club in Jamshedpur was a great success. And the first anniversary in 2017, they said we are going to do a mega book. And the mega book in an auditorium, we're not going to do it in the little club library. And we'll call friends and relatives and everybody. We said, okay. And then it zeroed down to two books, the Mahabharata, the Constitution. That was the public thing. These are two big books. So I said, look, and obviously it's Gautam, you got to do it. So I said, I can do the Mahabharata. I'm teaching the Mahabharata. But the Constitution, I don't know anything about it. I don't know what happened. I mean, how did it come about? So we made a compromise. The first anniversary, we did the Mahabharata. The second anniversary, we did the Constitution. So it was done for the book club. Then the school principals and vice principals and teachers of Jamshedpur's 52 schools wanted it. The Rotary clubs wanted it. And it just went on and on. But that was a 1 hour session. So I've curtailed it. I've cut out all the videos. And I'm going to give you a short 30-minute session of how did this constitution come about? How did it come down from the sky? Who created it? And there are three main people who created it. A spiritual guide, an architect, and a chief engineer who built it. Now, the spiritual guide, the architect, designed every aspect of it, every comma, full stop, everything was designed by him, and the engineer who put it into being. Okay. So before I go to the PPTs, let me tell you about the spiritual guide. You know who the spiritual guide is? It's Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi. Now, Gandhi, so when you look at Gandhi's life and you analyze his philosophical dimensions, 5 major events. So basically, there are 5 dimensions to Gandhi's philosophical outpourings, which affected all of us. 3 he brought from South Africa, and 2 he acquired during his stay in India when he returned from South Africa. So the first 3, which I'll show you in the PPTs, but let me just explain. The first one was Tolstoy and nonviolence and love. So he called his commune in South Africa the Tolstoy commune, the Tolstoy farm. Now, how did he get influenced by Tolstoy? When he defied the Russian Orthodox Church, because he told the Russian Orthodox Church, you are basically for man, by man, of man. There's no God. And it was like Jesus throwing out the moneylenders in Lent, from the temple. And Tolstoy was, of course, excommunicated by the Russian Orthodox Church, but Tolstoy wrote a book, The Kingdom of God is Within You. And he said that the only way you can approach God is what the Heart Math Institute and says, it's through love for the Sermon on the Mount was all that you need to know about connecting to God. Gandhi was very, very influenced with this. And he felt that nonviolence would be an integral and an essential part of anything that he would be involved in. The second thing he got, that if a government is not fulfilling the needs of the people can revolt. The third was, how does the system work? Remember, we were basically Maharajas and princely states. So he interned under Dadabhai Naoroji, the first Indian parliamentarian in England. So as a law clerk, his internship was under Dadabhai Naoroji. And under Dadabhai Naoroji, he learned every aspect of how democracy really works. How does parliament work? He knew the system, which very few people in India knew. Now, Dadabhai Naoroji had two clerks interning under him in 10-year difference. First was M.K. Gandhi. Second was M.A. Jinnah. You had the two fathers of the two nations, both interned under Dadabhai Naoroji. But Dadabhai Naoroji taught Gandhi how the system works. And the third thing which he picked up when in India was when he was writing My Experiments with Truth. Most famous figures do not write the unpleasant aspects of their lives. They try to cover it. A lot of very, very famous figures, including our very own Rabindranath Tagore, covered it because they don't want it known for posterity. But Gandhi was one guy who was brutally honest with his weaknesses and his faults in his Experiments with Truth. Nobody has ever done it. Nobody. And he wrote that for all his preachings on nonviolence, he failed totally in one area. It was the area of dealing with his wife and his sons, his family. There he was an autocrat, a Hitler, a complete fascist. He did not brook any kind of disagreement, his way or the highway. And he was very, very apologetic about it later on in life. And he wanted to soften himself. And he, the Ardhanarishwar concept, where every one of us is half man, half woman. If women forget the man in them, they become doormats. If men forget the women in them, they become Adolf Hitler. So we have to rejuvenate ourselves and bring this woman back. And this feminist aspect is what Gandhi was absolutely fixated on when his this thing was Ababen and Manuben, when he wanted the feminine to come in. Because he said without the feminine, any society is doomed. And the fifth and the last thing was the means. He felt that any end which is achieved by shifty means defeats itself. In the long run, that end doesn't blossom into what it's supposed to. It will crash. It has to crash. If the means are not straightforward, if the means are not honest, if the means are not ethical, then whatever end you have, it will not serve the purpose. So one example of that is when he came back, he went in for this the Hartal, the Bharat Bandh, which Jinnah didn't agree to, but Gokhale supported him and he went for it. By the third day, India was shut down. The British were absolutely trembling. This is the early 1920s. And just when they were ready for a discussion, Chauri Chaura happened, where 21 policemen who had bashed up a crowd of women and children and broken skulls were put into the local thana and burnt alive by the mob. And Gandhi said, the entire thing is off. We're not going to go for it. Now, Jinnah visited him in his room and said, I was wrong. You were right. We've got them on their knees. We can talk. They're going to give us dominion status, if not freedom, because they realize they can't control us. You had a brilliant idea. But Gandhi said, no. If you adopt bad means, in the long run, the end will not fructify into what you feel. So these are the 5 things I'm going to go into sharing.